Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world, and welcome to today's conversation with myself, with my co-host Enolia.
Hello.
And with our very special guest, Kellan Fluckiger. Did I get that right?
It was perfect. Yay, 100%.
Kellan, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you here. And our topic is forgiveness, a journey of courage to a place of freedom and power. And actually, if I'm not much mistaken, I know we didn't get much of a chance to talk before the program. Is that the actual title of your new book?
It is, Forgiveness. And then the subtitle is A Journey of Courage to a Place of Freedom and Power. And it's, first of all, I want to honor you two. I am grateful to be here doing a podcast or a video cast or whatever, live casts and all those kinds of things is a labor of love. And there's a lot of work that goes into it on your side, both of you. A lot of heart, a lot of effort, finding guests, picking topics and doing those things. And you're doing it to add good to the world, to bless people's lives, to lift and create goodness and all that cool stuff that I can't even find all the right words for. So, and I just want to honor you for that effort and work because I know what it's like and I appreciate who you're being and the opportunity to be here with you today.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure. And thank you for joining us.
Yes, very much so. Thank you very much.
So, Kellan, obviously we like to give the topic as the choice to our guests. And understandably, this is the one you've chosen. Would you like to share just a little with us of why this topic is so important to you? That's something that's, just something a little as to why you feel it's so important for us to talk about forgiveness.
I think that forgiveness is the most powerful word in the universe, second only to love. Love is the substance that both creates us and binds us together in our physical and spiritual form. And forgiveness is the thing that allows that to continue. Because from our first moments, in existence, literally, we begin to accumulate injuries, hurts, inadvertent, and so forth. And they all accumulate and it creates our view of the world about how things work and how they don't work and what's good and bad and all that stuff. And until we understand how to deal with, allow those things, surrender in one sense, take action where appropriate, but surrender without anger to the processes of life, it's hard, impossible to live to your fullest spiritual capacity. So like all my books, and I've written a zillion, Forgiveness, the book, has come out of my own journey. And it just so happens that this very morning, I got in an email with a foreword that I had asked a woman who I know, a dear friend, who's been a physician for 40-something years and a very, very prominent one, to write the foreword to this. And I just read it before we started this call, and her reflections on it and her embracing of this thought was just really meaningful and a very, very appropriate preparation. So I offer this topic today as a powerful salve for broken hearts, for broken dreams, to give the power to create opportunity. And sometimes people think that squishy stuff like that doesn't really have anything to do with making money and getting your way along in the real world. And I just beg to differ. It is so much a part of how we show up, how we approach every activity, including the mundane pieces of, I call them housekeeping, which includes everything from mowing the lawn to making a living. It literally colors everything we do. So to me, it's a profoundly important topic and full of all kinds of opportunity and power.
Thank you for sharing. Enolia, do you want to pass any comment?
I would agree. It is powerful. And I always like to approach it from looking at this forgiveness as freedom. It's true freedom. It allows you to lift the veil of pain and suffering. It allows you to move through the stories that you would create that would keep you stuck. It allows you to fully come to terms with the value that you bring and who you are, and to move through life without having the hooks that are dragging you back of suffering and pain and hurt and insecurities and everything else that you would use to deem to get stuck in the story. So yes, you're absolutely right. And, you know, of course, you know this. That's why you wrote many books on it. Exactly, right? You know, but there's so many people who don't. There's so many people who are stuck, and they're stuck in that story, and they're stuck in that residual suffering and pain and hurt, and just don't know how to push through it, to release it, to understand that they have the powerful tool to possess already, to use it. So yes, this is a really important topic. It's a very important topic.
Well, I agree. And one of the interesting things that I see first is people, it's a very loaded word. So when you talk about forgiveness, people immediately confuse a bunch of things. They confuse forgiveness, for example, as absolution. Like if I forgive someone, I'm absolving them of whatever they did. Well, forgiveness is not absolution. We don't even have the power to grant absolution. That's in the divine providence, and even courts and laws and all that stuff. It's out of our purview to do that. So forgiveness is not absolution. Another confusion is that forgiveness is somehow pretending things didn't happen. Like some difficult thing happens and then we pretend it. If I forgive him, I have to pretend it's away and go back to normal. Neither one of those are even close to the truth. You said it, Enolia, it is an energetic choice to no longer allow events from the past to have power in the present. Okay, so I'm relinquishing the power of all those events in the past from the present. And that's true whether somebody did something to me, whether circumstances, the universe, God, bad luck, haphazard circumstance, or whatever did something to me, or whether I did something to somebody or somebody's, and I'm feeling shame, guilt, self-loathing, etc. It doesn't matter which of those versions, two sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. As long as we hold that energy, we're prevented, as you said, from being who we can be, doing the good we can do, and all that jazz.
I think forgiveness. I think of it at thinking about my own story and thinking about the fact that actually those things that happened to me as a child, one, it was an accident. It was not deliberate what happened. It was an accident. Two, it was the circumstances. It was the rules and regulations of the hospital and the circumstances of my parents. So it was circumstances that were the result of me seeing them once a week for an hour while in hospital. As a child, that was devastating. That was the emotional abuse and everything else. But as the adult, is there any forgiveness even required? Because it was circumstances. And maybe when we get to the stage in our adult life that we can understand that there are things out of people's control that can have an effect, especially on children. So there's certain, for me now, there is no forgiveness of my parents required. So
that's perfectly described. Semantics, I don't want them to get in the way of anything. So the way I would think about that is someone might have things happen to them, circumstances, someone gets sick, they get in an accident, the jet engine falls on their house, whatever it is. And we can get mad at gravity, we can get mad at God, we can get mad at the universe, we can say, how come, this and this and this were allowed to happen, even if somebody didn't do it? And the process there, forgiveness may not be the right word, surrender, which means I no longer energetically hold someone or something responsible for my current circumstance. And there's two parts. First, I can choose, because I get to choose, to let it go. And second, I can also choose to discover the special empathy and learning that has developed in me because I have worked through, developed because of this circumstance. And if I don't forgive or surrender, if I don't let it go, I never even understand, let alone have access to the empathy and shaping that it can have done in my soul to do good for others. So you had something happen to you, a circumstance. If you let that go, or since you've let that go, then you're in a position to help other people understand what happens when you let it go, and the freedom and the power and the opportunity that comes. But if you stayed locked up in not blaming your parents, even if you said, well, my parents didn't do it, but the stupid hospital or the stupid creator or the stupid universe, and you were locked up in that energy, then you wouldn't be able to access that empathy and that opportunity.
Enolia.
And I love what you said with the accessing of the empathy and the opportunity. So I'm going to throw it back at you, Kellan, and I want to say, talk about a little bit how people need to access that, because that's the key. All right. We sit there and we know circumstances have prevailed and there's nothing that we can do about it. And we say, oh, yes, yes, I forgive. But deep down inside, that person is still harboring that anger, that resentment, or whatever that manifestation is within. And they go through a few iterations, and people believe that saying, I forgive you, and it's done once, and it's over, and it's released, works. And we find that we have to do much more than just say the words. There's a whole embodiment that needs to be released when it is a deep hurt and a deep suffering. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about that process?
So I'm going to do that by telling a story about a dog, and then I'm going to tell that same story in my life. I had a dog. I'm not a dog person. All my life, I didn't have dogs. My mom didn't want animals growing up. She grew up on a farm, and animals were dirty and belonged outside. So I never grew up with any animals. When I got older, one of my kids got a dog and then didn't want it. So we inherited a puppy that was like 2 or 3 months old in November of 2007. And it was right about that time that my entire life changed. Before 2007, I'd struggled with 35 years of depression. I'd never talked to anyone. I'd been through multiple marriages and divorces. I'd been a drug addict and in and out of rehab, and made a lot of money and wasted a lot of it. Just was a disaster of a life. And in 2007, a divine intervention happened. It invited me to change my life, and that will be the framework for the second story. But anyway, right at the beginning, right when that happened, it happened in August and September of 2007. And in November of that year, I got a dog. I inherited it from my kid who didn't want it anymore. And he was a puppy born in August. And on New Year's Eve, I'd never had a dog before, so I probably didn't know how to take care of it very well, but we were roughhousing around and playing, and the dog bumped into a speaker stand in one of the rooms, and the speaker fell off the stand and fell on the dog's paw, and it broke all the metatarsals in the paw, and the dog was howling in pain. And so we rushed the dog in the middle of the night, New Year's Eve, to the emergency vet. And we took him in there, and they did the surgery they could, did everything the best they could. And we were there many hours, and they brought it out and gave it to us and said, we did all we could do. Don't let him run around too much. Right. A 3-month-old puppy. Don't let him run around too much for the next 6 weeks, but it probably won't ever heal right. And he may have a limp later. Okay. So that was the event. Speaker fell on paw. I felt guilty and responsible for that, as I didn't think I'd been careful. Didn't matter. The dog healed. We kept him chained to the door for 6 weeks, so he had a very short run. And despite all that, sure enough, later he manifested a limp, and when it got cold or he ran around too much, et cetera, et cetera. So the dog had a permanent after effect, a permanent limp forever from that circumstance. Every time I saw that limp, felt awful, guilty. So those were the facts of the situation. What I learned from the dog was that regardless of the fact that the rest of the dog's life was shaped by the fact that he had a limp, he did not allow that limp to change his interaction with me, with life, with his enjoyment, with his dogness. He was dog all in, all the way. And when he limped, he dealt with the limp. And so I have taken, and of course we know dogs. They're loving, they're forgiving, they're all in, they're just dogs, right? And so that's who the dog was until he died. And he was with us for 10 more years. And then in another stroke of divine stuff, which peppers all of my life since the intervention in 2007, he passed away at a very other critical juncture in our life. But anyway, here's the point. I have had shaping in my life. I was raised in an abusive house. I got a lot of beatings, discipline that today would be felony child abuse, and emotional and physical and verbal abuse, and even some sexual shaming that today would have children removed from the home. I ended up believing I was no good for decades, and that shaped my life in similar ways. And in the context of forgiveness, the point about the dog and me is that regardless of the fact that the dog had a limp, he still lived his life to the fullest without worrying about the limp. So the idea that forgiveness somehow erases all of the shaping or consequences that may have happened because some event or events happen either accidentally or on purpose isn't the same as the energetic process of removing the charge, the emotional thing around that. So all of the stuff that was, quote, done to me that shaped my life for decades, that helped me live in these addictions and all that stuff, long since forgiven. And whatever residual shaping, limp, that I carry from having decades of depression, it's okay. I live and I love with that, just like the dog did with his limp. So the idea that forgiveness is going to wash away all consequences and erase, it's all nonsense. The dog limped till he died. I had those experiences, and it shaped my life. And I have 10 children, and because of the 3 divorces and the addiction, some of them still don't talk to me. And I have that opportunity to grow in love and service, and there will come a day when all that's okay, and I know it. But I could still live in frustration, like the dog could have been mad, sit around and say, I have a limp. I can't run as much as I want to. I'm pissed off. The dog didn't do that. We choose not to do that. So here's my invitation to the listeners. I don't care what's happened to you. I don't even care what permanent shaping it has inflicted on your life. It is what it is, just like it was with the dog and just like it is with me. The invitation is to allow the divine and your choice to be healed, to heal your heart and spirit so that you can be the brightest light you can be, just like the dog was, and just like I choose to be, no matter what else has happened. So it's still a choice. We may have residual limps from whatever happened, however many days, weeks, months, years, or decades ago. And it is our choice as to whether or not we allow those things to reduce our light and opportunity to be and lift and bless in the world.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's our freedom that is gained. The other person may not even be giving it a second thought. They don't care what we think. So why do we spend our time being involved in fretting and getting angry and annoyed and all the other things about something? The only person we are affecting is ourselves. do we choose freedom, or do we choose to be tied to whatever it was?
So there's two sides. I'm sorry, please finish.
Forgiveness is that freedom. If we can just allow it to be what it was and let it go. Yeah, that same old that saying, let it go, let it go. But you know, are there some better words to use?
You know, there's two sides to this coin. The first side is somebody did something to you or me, whether it's circumstance or whether it's someone intentional or someone out of oversight or even cruelty. This even goes to someone who abuses someone or does awful things to them. That's side one. Somebody did something or something did something to you. Okay. In that circumstance, we hold whatever we choose to hold. Maybe they don't feel bad about it. Maybe they meant to do it. Maybe they remain cruel and unrepentant and couldn't care less that they did it. Maybe all those things are true. My choice to forgive that person has nothing to do with them. It doesn't have it, which is what you said. It doesn't matter if they care. It doesn't matter if they feel bad. I'm not getting rid of it. There's justice in the universe, and I don't get to administer it. God's going to handle all that, and it's over my pay grade. Good, let it stay there. What I'm going to do is I'm no longer going to let your injury, even if you're still cruel, evil, and rotten, hurt my present. So I let it go. Whatever limp I still have from that awful misdeed, hey, I have it. But I'm going to enjoy all of my life, every second, every minute, do all the good I can possibly do because I said so, because you can't have power over me anymore. And I forgive you, and I hope with all my heart that you do the things that are good for you to heal and clean out your heart and life. And if you don't think you need any of that, okay, good. I don't need to worry about that because it's not mine to do. I can't fix it. I can't enforce it. And I can't make you do anything anyway. But I'm done letting you have any influence, power, or control over me. And I'm also done fussing about the fact that I still have a limp because you busted my whatever, however long ago. I'm just done with that. So that's one side of the coin. And the other side of the coin is where I lived a lot because I had all that stuff happen to me and I lived in depression. I was married and divorced 3 times. I was a lousy partner. I cheated. I was a drug addict. I lied. I was a perpetual and a pathological liar practically. And I had 10 kids and they saw marriages and divorces. And oh my word, it was a disaster. On the one hand, I made a lot of money and I had a big bunch of positions, and behind the scenes, it was a wreck. My life was a wreck. So I lived with awful shame. Oh, if I had only, imagine what I could, when I stopped being that person in 2007, I started trying to be better and like change my life, which I did completely. I felt I carried guilt and shame that drove me to attempt suicide. I mean, like I couldn't deal with the fact that I had been so awful. I had done this. I knew better. I shouldn't. How could I possibly? And you know the drill. So there's the choice again. Often when people hate themselves or they're angry with themselves for what they did, they hold back forgiving themselves until somehow the other person pats them on the head and says, oh, it's okay, forgive you, or some version of that. Oh, then I can finally, those events are unconnected. Whoever I hurt may have a limp. They may have been shaped in ways because of my neglect or because they saw my example as an addict or whatever. I can't change that. So if I wait until they do whatever they need to do in their lives to get healthy, and then they come and say, oh, okay, then what I've done is I've tied my opportunity to serve and change to their willingness to do their own work, which I can't control that either. Mm-hmm. So we make the amends that we can, we apologize, we fix whatever there is to fix, but almost all of that stuff involves trust and truth, and you can't fix any of that anyway. All you can do is choose to be me. I can choose to be the best version of myself that I can, write books, love people, coach, be the brightest light I can to help as many people as I can, and forgive myself, because continuing to carry those rocks simply means I put a lid on my light all the time. Oh, if anybody knew, oh no, this evil rottenness. And as long as I'm exaggerating it, but not really, because that's what I did. And when I stopped doing it, the truth of there's justice in the universe and it'll take care of it that I talked about in the other side, if somebody did something to me, is also true on this side. There will be invitation and opportunity for anyone that I hurt through my neglect and addictions to heal themselves if they choose to take advantage of that opportunity, just like there was for me. So I have to trust that, which is surrender. I have to be the best I can be and forgive myself, and then be all that I can be, no matter what. And if somebody gets mad at me and says, how dare you because of XYZ, the answer is always the same. I love you to pieces. I invite you to do whatever you need to do to get healthy. If there's anything I can do to help, I will. And I'm still going to shine my light as bright as I can to help everybody that breathes. And those are the two sides of the same coin to me.
Yeah. Enolia.
And, you know, I'm sitting here listening to your story, and it just brings up dozens of stories of my own, but I'm going to share one of which emphasizes really what you're saying. When people don't realize that they're carrying stone, they're carrying the heaviness when they don't forgive. And I remember doing, part of being a shaman, part of being a medicine woman is that we have to face ourselves, period. You don't even consider working on anybody else until you start facing your own stuff. You're aware of it, you know it to the nth degree, you know your tendencies, you take inventory of it, right? So here I am going through the iterations, right? And I'm working with a grandfather, Lynch Archuleta. I'll never forget him, ever, 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 because he taught me the greatest lesson of my life. And so, you know, he's talking to me, and I'm thinking I'm impressing him, blah, 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 blah. We're just having this conversation. So I go to meet him because we're doing desert intensives, and desert intensives means that he takes me out in the desert. He's going to teach me lessons throughout in the desert. And he takes me out to this really remote part of the desert, and he goes, go get a stone, you know, and he talks to me about the stones millions of years old, the energy they hold, everything that they are, what their meaning is to the land. And he goes, go pick one. So I'm like all excited. And I go and I pick this little tiny stone. He goes, oh my goodness, what are you doing? Go get a big stone. The grandfathers want to talk to you, you know, and I'm like all excited. So I come back with a stone about this, but he's like, no, 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 no. Based on how we talked, you really need to get a nice sizable stone. So now I'm really excited. Like, what are we going to do? Carve it? What, you know? So I go out and I grab this really big stone, and I come back and it's weighted and it's heavy and it's dirty. And, you know, there it is. I got it. So I get in the car with it, and he's talking to me, and the way that we're arranged, he has two houses, and I'm staying at the house across the street from where he stays. And he's talking to me and one other student there as we're cooking and everything. Well, we're not cooking yet. As I come into the house and we're supposed to cook, and she's cooking already, and she's like, Enolia, will you help me cook? And I'm like, oh, I'd love to. So I go to put the stone down, and he goes, what are you doing? I'm putting the stone down. Oh, no, you're not. Carry that stone. Right? And I'm like, is he crazy? You know, so here I am. I could only do a couple of things because I could only chop with one hand, you know, a little bit, or manipulate the things with one hand. And I go use the bathroom. I go to put the stone in. What are you doing? And I go, I'm putting the stone down. He goes, oh, no, you're not. And so for the next 3 days, he made me proceed to carry that stone everywhere I went. I could not. I slept with that stone. I cooked with the stone. I walked with that stone. It was a pain in the butt. It was a pain in the ass. I didn't know what to do with that stone. And then he finally goes, are you ready to give it up now? And I got it. Right? Here we are carrying all of the resentments, all of the harboring of all of the anger, the manipulation, the guilt, the shame, the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, because we won't let it go. We won't forgive the person who invoked it in us or brought it out of us, whatever the case may be. And that was the physical manifestation of what it was like to carry all that crap all over the place, everywhere, with you. Don't put it down because you're not putting it down. Don't put it down because you haven't let it go. Don't put it down because you haven't released it. You don't want to release it. You want to hold on to it. So this is what it's like when you hold on to it. So by the time the 3 days were over and he was like, are you ready to put it down? I was like, yes. The lesson that taught me was I no longer held resentment. I no longer want it. I forgive all those who have done harm to me. I forgive the harm that I've done to others by forgiving myself. That was my prayer. And it was the biggest lesson I ever learned. But the one thing that I learned mainly is that forgiveness is multidimensional. I forgive on this physical level. I have to forgive on this emotional level. I have to forgive on this perceptual level. I have to forgive even in that spiritual level of how I view life. There's so many facets by which we need to forgive, and to forgive on one level and not the other doesn't work. It doesn't work. You got to go through it. You got to go through all aspects of it. So I share that story because I want our listeners to understand the gravity by which you're saying when you say, I let it all go, because we don't get it. We don't get the gravity of what it means to put that stone down, to take the load of bricks off of our back and to live. And I'll turn it over to you, Sara Jane.
But brilliant. When you started talking about that rock, because it was hardly a stone, I'm assuming. it was. I thought I know exactly where this is going. But then I thought that is experience, and it was like with my journey. What can I do to help me? I never looked for what others could do for me, because our journey is about ourselves. It is about the forgiveness of self, for allowing yourself to be affected the way you were affected. Now, don't get me wrong, as a child, there is no way anybody can try and explain anything to you, because you do not, especially the age I was at a year old, you don't understand. It just happened. And that there is that feeling of being unwanted, unloved, not good enough. And I grew up being a people pleaser because of it. But when I woke up, when I had that wake up call, it was, what can I do to help me? Because this is my journey. This isn't what other people can do for me. I just somehow knew it had to come from me. It was about going, I didn't realize it was about going inside rather than looking on the outside. That terminology has come since for me. But it was about that inside work, to be able to let go of all the outside stuff. And it was about the forgiveness of, okay, I let it for so many years affect me the way it did. And I have the physical. It is just that it is a scar round my neck rather than a limp. But I still have that physical reminder of that accident. And I wouldn't change it for a thing, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, having this conversation with both of you right now, if that hadn't happened to me. And so I can love that. And I feel very blessed that I feel that it was a gift I gave myself. And the gift I've given myself is the gift of being able to understand, to be able to forgive. And know that forgiveness is a gift. And when we can gift it to ourselves, we actually break that chain between ourselves and the other individuals, which can actually help them. It gives them a greater freedom to hopefully be able to move on in their lives, because they're no longer affecting mine, and I break the attachment. Kellan.
I love both of those things. It is a gift. And I describe it as a gift you give yourself, no matter which side of the coin you come from. And Enolia, I love that story because it's a powerful way to illustrate the weight of the rocks. And in the book on forgiveness, I talk about the backpack, and I talk about it's full of two colors of rocks, the red ones and the blue ones, without either one meaning anything. And the red ones are the anger and resentment you hold to somebody else, and the blue ones, or maybe it's the other way around, are the garbage you hold toward yourself. And your backpack's full of them, and all that does is weigh you down. You can't climb the mountain. You can't be a beacon of light. And so in my own, like many, I've created a morning ritual, and mine's quite lengthy, 2.5 to 3 hours. But part of it is some statements that I carefully love and live into. And one of them is, I am forgiveness. I hold no anger, bitterness, or judgment toward anyone for anything, including myself. And I remind myself of that every day with lightness and not heaviness. For the very same reason, I remind myself that I have put down the rock and that I have surrendered the process of development and the process of growth that this life is designed to produce for us, even though sometimes we argue with the direction and I wouldn't choose this way. But, at least for me, I believe it comes from my lack of being able to see a bigger picture. So I've long since put down my playbook and just chosen to enjoy, I would say, unconditional happiness, and just go through whatever comes in each moment, in each day, and so forth. So I love the rock. It's a good way, a beautiful story. And I probably will tell people your story about your thing as another illustration of that, because it's a truth. The weight is real. The effect is real. The limiting power of it on everything else you do is real. You couldn't use your hands. You couldn't go very fast. You couldn't do this and that and the other. And we sort of pretend that those weight thingies are in the background, and they're not. They're front and center, and they're severely limiting in every capacity: spiritual, visceral, emotional, physical, all of it. And the layered thing that you talked about, you can't, like if you do one without the other, then it's not done.
You're absolutely right. And I'm sitting here thinking about not only that, but we have to give ourselves the gift of time. Because, we think about our family dynamics, and you alluded to this too. And so for me, I grew up with a father that was an alcoholic, and there were a lot of times we got confrontational, into fights, everything else, I can't stand you, blah, 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 blah. And it came to a time in my life where, I'm married, I have 2 boys, I love my boys, I love my husband at the time. But because of the issues that I had with my father, how I was treating them, the things that I would react to, the responses that I give, were turning around and shaping and cultivating the exact same scenario that I had. And I didn't want that. Mm-hmm. And so, I say this to our listeners because you have to give yourself the time to thoroughly forgive, because if you don't, you will repeat. And I mean this, you will thoroughly repeat the same scenario that you came from. And you can go in with that determined attitude of saying, I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen. And you go and you ensure you do this and you ensure you do that. None of that means anything. It means anything. Matter of fact, the fact that you're doing that and the fact that you're determined not to recreate it is exactly how you recreate it. How do you let go of something and stop a pattern from happening and taking place? Is you forgive. And I remember putting my father's ring on my little altar, my little made up altar, because my father had passed away. But the energy, his spirit, it still didn't matter. It had to be forgiven. And I remember picking up his ring every morning as a ritual for about 4 to 5 months, saying, I forgive my father, my father's father, and his father. It stops with me. I forgive myself. And I remember doing that. And then The sign to me that I had truly forgiven him is that when I could talk about all of the things that took place between us without any energy, without any charge, about the emotional impact that it had on me and the drama that I would create every time I wanted to talk about it, when I could just talk about it matter-of-factly because I had learned the lesson, I had embraced the lesson, I had embodied the lesson, and it took me 3 to 4 months over time, forgiving him constantly, keeping it in the forefront of my mind until I could let this energy, let this thing go. And people don't get it. They want to say, well, I said I was sorry. No, your body, your energy, your outlook, everything that you're presenting as we talk about this, and your body language is telling me, no, you haven't done a thing. Nothing. And we have to understand that if it takes 5 months, then it takes 5 months. If it takes a year, then it takes a year. Do it. But take the time to do it and say it and verbalize it and live it and keep it in the forefront and keep after it until you can let that go, until you can have that conversation about it and it just be a matter-of-fact conversation. That's my take on it. I'll ask you guys yours.
Well, I love that. That's why I named the subtitle The Journey of Courage to a Place of Freedom and Power, because the journey of courage means it takes courage, in my mind at least, to face those things, to choose to do what you did day after day, time after time, to every time you slip into resentment or negativity, if you're in the process, to forgive yourself again, to commit to, I'm going to this place where it no longer has charge, where it no longer has power over me, where I can live with whatever shaping is residual, but the energetic context is one of freedom. And I truly know that person is on their own spiritual journey. And I truly, from the depth of my heart, wish them the best and love them to the point where I want them to have the experiences and changes that they need for their growth, not to satisfy something for me, because I need, recognition, acknowledgement, apology, or whatever, or forgiveness, or the pat on the head, or whatever. I don't need any of that. I need nothing. I am whole and complete because I have surrendered all of that energy toward myself and toward others. So I love it. I love the ritual aspect. I love the constant reminder. And it is a choice. And the fun thing about forgiveness is you don't need anybody's permission. You don't need anybody's agreement. You don't need anybody to tell you it's okay. You don't need anybody to bless your thing. It's something you can do, as hard as it is or whatever. You can do it yourself. It's under your control, and it's yours to do or not do. It's yours to enjoy the fruits or not, and it's between you and the divine to create that energetic release, no matter which side of the coin you're on.
Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely. But it's also that thing of, it really doesn't matter. In fact, isn't it Anthony Hopkins, the actor, who said, it's none of your business what other people think about you? And that was the moment of enlightenment to me, was that sudden thought, why am I worrying about what other people think about me when they're not? And if you like, let's put some humor into this. Who the bloody hell do I think I am that I think other people are thinking about me all the time? And I'm not a great one for swearing, but it really is that, isn't it? Everybody has so much going on in their own lives. Why are we worrying about it? Get on with your life, your experiences. Forgive yourself, forgive them. You haven't even got to tell them you've forgiven them. It's that energy that you create that creates your freedom and power, that actually they may not realize it, but it offers them a chance for freedom and empowerment of their own energies. There are a lot of people that turn around and call me a healer. I'm not. The only person I can heal is me. However, the energies with what I bring, what those energies do, when I offer them to others, if they are accepted they can empower that individual's own self-healing. Our forgiveness of self, of circumstances, of situations, of hurt, of pain, etc., is not just freedom for us. It can support the freedom within others. What is it they say? Shine your light and you give others you help others to realize they can shine theirs too. I'm not sure exactly the wording, but we can do that for ourselves and for each other with love and with forgiveness.
You're so right on that. And I want to finish that story too, because when I talked about, you know, what was it that I wanted to do to ensure that I didn't pass the patterns on to my sons, it was the forgiveness. Because what happened is that when I lifted the veil of forgiveness, I was no longer looking at my boys through the eyes of pain, but the young men that they had to prosper to be, not what I was going to prevent them from doing. And see, when you do that, when you lift that veil and when you make that change and you make that shift, what happens is that you're no longer talking to them in the scenario by which of you're trying to prevent, but you are talking to them in a scenario that you're cultivating, nurturing, and growing versus trying to control. And then what happens is that you get the result that you're looking for, because you're not coming from a place of fear, of pain, of where you're looking through the veil and it's like, I'm determined he's not going to be like this, and I'm determined he's not going to be like that. And what do? In that determination, you turn around and you cultivate it. Breaking the pattern is using forgiveness. Breaking the cultivation of repeating the same thing destined to happen again and again and again is forgiveness. Forgiveness breaks that pattern. And that's how you nurture and help and assist other people, because you're vibrating from a base core of love. And then what happens is that love shines through whatever hat you put on. It doesn't matter whether I'm the mommy hat, the corporate hat, the this hat, and that hat. Love is coming and vibrating through that hat, not pain, anger, and resentment. Because you can't fake it. If you're in pain and you have anger and you resent, it's coming through, that vibration is coming through, and that's cultivating the relationship that you are trying to nurture. You're not nurturing it, you're damaging it. Mm-hmm. So these pieces are really, really important.
Kellan.
I love that. Your true energy comes through no matter what. And that's what you just said, and I love that. It does. And that's why when we started, I said love is the most powerful word, and forgiveness is the close second, because they're so related. And I love what you said, Enolia, about, you know, you create the very thing you're trying to avoid because you're trying to force it not to be created. And that act of fear and force creates it. I lived that, because my mom, in her effort to make sure I was a certain way or wasn't a certain way in the context of be a good boy in religion and everything else, created the very worst case, or I don't know, the very worst, a very bad case of whatever it is she thought she was trying not to have. And so as you said that, I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, I'm the poster child for that. And also in the next generation. And I knew that I had received a lot of abuse. And so I was determined not to do that. And I didn't. But the negative part of it still came through in my own addictions, and then, you know, precipitated dysfunctional behavior for them. So I really resonated or received the thought that you said there. And I love that. And the other thing I laughed about a little bit is when you were talking, Mary, about the what people think. I have a name for that, and it's WITOT, Witot. And I have a joke, and I say Witot kills more people than COVID ever will, and Witot stands for what I think others think. And we live in this idea that we're constrained, we're constricted, we're hamstrung, we're beat down, we're whatever, because we're worried about what others think. What I think others think, we actually don't even know, but what I think others think. And so we live in this straitjacket that prevents us from being the love and the kindness and the joy and forgiveness. Because, if, fill in the blank, the stories are infinite. And so if listeners, if you take something away, ask yourself, when you are behaving or not behaving, when you're talking or not talking, are you infected with the Witot fungus? Because it kills more people than COVID ever will.
Absolutely. I sit here and I'm thinking about the fact that our bodies are 60 to 70% water, and our thoughts manifest because water has memory. It's proven in scientific fact that water has memory. So everything that you're echoing in your thoughts and your minds and how you choose to see life is echoing within your body. And if you want to prevent dis-ease or disease, it starts right here. It starts right here. And again, forgiveness is freedom. Forgiveness is everything.
It really is an access that we have to creation.
Yeah. So I know we can go on and on because I'm loving this conversation. I mean, Kellan, I could talk to you for hours. Okay. So what would you leave our listeners with? What would you leave our listeners with?
So the thing that mattered to me, I didn't have the divine intervention that offered me the invitation to change my life until I was 52. I left home at 17, completely dysfunctional, burned through multiple marriages, multiple jobs, lots of money, lots of addictions and everything else. And I didn't wake up till I was 52. So the thing, and then since then, it's been a lot of work. I'm 66 now, so it's been almost 15 years. Here's what I would leave. I don't care. And I don't mean this in a callous way. I mean it with all the love that I can look into your eyes. I don't care where you've been. I don't care what's happened to you. I don't care what you've done. It doesn't matter. And that doesn't mean there aren't consequences for them or you or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the choice that I have and that each of us have right this minute is what we do now. Tomorrow is a blank page. Tomorrow's not a projection of the past unless you allow that. So no matter where you've been or what's happened, or how late you think it is, or how lost your opportunity is, or whatever the fill in the blank, it's never too late to access the power of forgiveness. It's never too late to clean out your heart. It's never too late to open yourself to the possibility of brightness, of love, of capability, of creation, and to access by dropping the rocks, by allowing the possibility that some other place and time is the place for justice and vengeance, and forgiving yourself, forgiving others, not just because it's a good idea, but because the world, everyone around you, including me, we need you in your lightest and brightest and most capable creative form. That's what we need. We don't need you or me bogged down with the weight of the rocks that Enolia talked about. We need you in your lightest and brightest form, and that only comes when you forgive yourself, others, and everyone, and understand that tomorrow is empty until you write on that page.
Excellent. Beautifully said.
Beautifully stated. Sara Jane?
Trust yourself. Learn to believe in yourself. Because this is about you. It is not about anybody else. It is not about the things that have happened. It is about the person that you are right now. And are you happy with that person? Do you love that person? Do you respect yourself enough to say enough? It is time for me to take control of my life. And that will include forgiveness of self, of others, to give you the freedom to move forward. And I can tell you that when I took that step that started my freedom, boy, did my life change. And you will hear it from so many people. When we wake up, for a better way of putting it, to it's our life. I'm here for me, for the experiences I choose to have. And I don't care. It's the caring. You got to realize the word caring. I don't care what other people think about me, because I spent far too many years doing just that. I care enough about people to step out of their lives, to not get involved in their story, so that when they are ready to let go of that story, of everything that's hurt them, and I can tell my story almost with a smile, in spite of how traumatic it was, and in spite of the breaths that people come because of what happened to me, it doesn't matter. Because my story, I accept as being a very, very beautiful gift. Free yourself, know yourself, and be yourself, whoever that might be.
And I'm just going to finish it with this little tip. Make forgiveness the priority. We always like to put it as, oh, I'll get there. Oh, yeah, that person's pissed me off. It's been a few years, but I'll get to it maybe. No, I'm just going to let it stay. Don't. The things you need to forgive, put in the forefront. Maybe your life isn't going good because you haven't taken the time to forgive. Okay? Put what you need to forgive in your forefront. Create a little altar. Remind yourself every day. State it. Make amends with the relationships. But for yourself, not for anybody else, for yourself, first and foremost. And then what happens if the byproduct is that the person comes along or the person accepts your forgiveness, not because you need the approval, but they happen to do it, then that's all excellent. But make it your priority now. It's never too late, and I don't care how long it takes, because that's what shifts your life. So being vulnerable is the strength. And I'll say it again, being vulnerable is the strength. Tap into your own superpower. It's only this perception that vulnerability is weakness. To dare to be able to stand in your authenticity and say, I forgive myself, I made a mistake. That is a strength, because then what else could anyone dare say about you that you haven't already confronted for yourself?
I have to apologize. I think in the middle of this, I called Sarah Mary. Did I do that?
You did. It's all right.
I apologize. When Enolia said Sarah, I'm like, I said the wrong name. So for listeners, I apologize. Sara Jane and Enolia, and I knew that, and I know it. And for some reason, some other thing went zoom out of my mouth. So blessed be both of you. Blessed be your every effort and every step. And I'm delighted to have shared this time with both of you today.
Well, we are delighted to have shared it with you. And where can people reach you if they want to reach out to you, Kellan? How can they get to you?
When you have a weird name like Kellan Fluckiger, you can't hide. So if someone says they can't find me, only two things are true. They're actually not trying, they're fibbing, or B, they've misspelled my name. So as long as you spell my name right, you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And I've got a whole pile of books on Amazon and music on Amazon and podcasts and thousands of hits from Google from my old executive stuff, plus all the stuff I'm doing now. So I welcome any connection and any conversation. And all you have to do is spell my name right. When I went to get my website, I had no competition. It was like $2, right? Kellan, Kellan, last name Fluckiger, F like Frank, Luckiger.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll make sure that's under the YouTube video so that people can actually go and just click on it.
Yes. And Sara Jane, why don't you tell them where they can reach you?
Best place, I know, is this giftofhealingtv.com, so I'm always there, and vocalreiki.com. Yeah, we're always here for you. Enolia.
Enolia.live and YouTube, it's Enolia, and Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Enolia or Enolia Empowers. You can't miss it. There's not too many Enolias out there also. I just want to thank you, Kellan. It's been an honor to meet you. It's been an honor to have this discussion with you. Sara Jane, thank you, my partner in crime. I love it. We just always have fun when we do these. It's just so much fun when we have fantastic guests like this and just powerful conversations. And I want to share with everyone for our next show, we are going to be having Ivy Barreto on, and that's going to be on May 11th at 7:30 p.m. GMT. That's UK and Africa time, because I'm coming to you in Africa and Angola. And so Ivy is going to be out from Ireland, so she'll be there at that standard time also. So that's going to be a first, but a great one. And she's going to be talking about spaces and how to move through the story of stress. Spaces. So again, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank you, Kellan. Thank you, Sara Jane. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Enolia. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
folks. Bye.
Bye.